Well, the first slide was, there's Victoria and Heather too. All right. We're getting some crews here. Good morning, ladies. Anyway, this is week 3, the names of God. So we're going to look at the Yahweh names. So we're getting into names that maybe are a little bit more familiar to us. The Elohim, we've heard of Elohim and all these names that we studied before, but we're probably a little more familiar with the Yahweh names, especially if you read Glenn Miller. He has a lot of Yahweh names in his devotionals. So anyhow, let's open with prayer and then go ahead and begin our lesson. Father, our hearts are heavy with sadness and concern for the loss of so many lives, many of them children in the hill country of our state. We pray that they feel your presence, your comfort, and your peace during this unimaginably difficult time. We also lift Andy's family and pray for your protection over them as well. Gracious God, thank you for bringing us together this morning to study the various aspects and characteristics of your name, Yahweh. We ask you to be present with us this morning in our study, and we lift these things in thy name. Amen. So we have a question, our little question we start with each day. And the question is, where were you born? And if you have been told any stories about that day, share one briefly with the group. Say briefly, it's a long lesson. There's no way around it because she has a long video. So where were you born? And were there anything that you've been told, any stories about that day? Who's got some stories about, you don't have to say when you were born, just where. And stories, if you have any. So anybody, who wants to start us off?
I've got a story.
Okay.
I was born in Australia, and my parents on September 4th, and my parents called my grandmother up and they said, guess what? You've got a granddaughter. She was born on September 4th. And my grandmother, who was living in Texas, said, no, she wasn't. She was born on the 3rd. It's the 3rd today.
So which day do you celebrate?
I celebrate the 4th.
But you don't have to go back to Australia.
I'd like to one day.
That's a good one. On September the 4th, Victoria's going to have a birthday. Who else has a story about their birthday? Anne? Wait, whoa, Catherine's giving her the microphone.
Okay, Ann Parton. I was born in Kearney, Nebraska. Please do not call me a Cornhusker. My father, it was the end of World War II, and he was an Army officer assigned to an Air Force base. So that's why they were in Nebraska. And I was born in a Catholic hospital, and my father had left to take my older brother to the babysitter. And so he's coming back, and I can't imagine how this worked, but he said a nun leaned out the window of the hospital and said, Mr. Miller, you have a girl. So, and I didn't live there. I don't think I lived there a whole year. But people will try to say you're a Cornhusker, and I'm going, no, I don't think so. Anybody else at this time?
Anybody else have a birth story?
I just know where I was born.
Say that again?
I just know where I was
You
born.
just know.
Barbara. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a Yankee and proud of it. And the day my father was in the Army there too, it was the big quartermaster depot thing during the war. And apparently he called the, after, you know, he knew I was born and everything, he called the hospital and he said, this is Lieutenant Dull, the wife of one of your patients. So I guess he was a little excited.
You got a little confused and all the excitement. Ellen, the question is, where were you born? And do you have any stories that go along with your birthday? I didn't say when, just where. And we've talked about, we've already talked about the hill country and the stuff there. We prayed about it. If you have anything to update us with when we get done here, we'll come back to you.
Okay. Well, this is Sandra Hurlbert. I was born Baylor Hospital, downtown Dallas, you know, almost downtown, whatever. And yeah, July 15th, gonna have a birthday soon. My I don't like my middle name particularly. It's Donn, Donn. And the story is that my mom was going to name me Sandra Donna Severin. And it's like, I don't know what possessed her
there you
with that,
go.
because that just doesn't, I don't think that flows myself. But my dad didn't like the name Donna, and mom says, you know, he had a girlfriend or something that at some point named Donna, and so he wasn't going with that name. Now, knowing dad, it's like, really? You know, but anyway, so I am not Sandra Donna, I'm Sandra Donn, but it's Donn, not like Dawn, which would make more sense. Yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
That's right.
I like talking into your hearing aid thing a lot, remember?
Oh, it
This-
doesn't help anybody else, unfortunately.
This is Cynthia May. I was born in September in Gainesville, Texas, September the 16th. And I don't really know many stories about my birth. I know my dad must have been there at some point, but he worked for the railroad. And for some reason, he had to be out of town for 2 weeks after I was born. So my mother stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Hi.
And she said, the doctor said, well, your husband's not home. Why don't you just stay here? And yeah.
Wow. Can you imagine doing that today? Too bad. Get some helper.
And after a week, she was allowed to sit up and dangle her feet over the side of the bed.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's too funny.
This is Karen. I was born June 7th in Gainesville, Texas. Cynthia and I were both in the group of children who were born after our dads came home from the war. When I was born, my dad said, "Oh no, another one of the expensive kind." Anyway, the doctor fussed at him because he had 2 girls. He said, "I have not found that to be true, Wilson."
Here, I'll think. Anybody, Ellen, you got a story?
Oh, I got a story.
Ellen's got a story. And we got
so-
people online, though. Let's forget the people online.
September 7th, and in Dallas at Florence Nightingale Hospital, which means I'm a little older than Sandra, because I then changed that to Baylor. There's 2 very brief stories because I'm a Pendergrass. One is that it was the Miss America contest. And my grandfather saw me and said, well, she'll never be a Miss America. And then my dad missed the whole thing because he was down arguing about the price.
Oh. Let's catch Catherine then, ladies online. You don't know if you have a story? Are we passing you by? You think about it, come back. Okay, online, ladies, any stories online? Yeah.
So I have a story. I was born June 1st in Neptune, New Jersey, and like Barbara Clemens, I am also a Yankee. My mother let my sister name me, and each older girl got to name the younger ones. And I never got a middle name, so my name is just Cindy with my last name, and no middle name, and it's not Cynthia. So it's really very common. So I don't know if my mom knew about identity theft today, what we know today, if she knew it back then, she for sure would have given me a middle name or something a little bit more complicated. So, yeah. So, when you have like a 14-year-old name you, this is what happens.
14-year-old. Melody, Heather, any names, anything for you guys?
Yeah, I was born in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of DC. And
There's a granddaughter born there.
can you hear me?
Yes.
My mom has small bone structure, narrow hips, and me being an almost 10-pound baby, I didn't fit. So
Wow.
after 24 hours of labor, I was an emergency C-section. And if I was a girl, I was going to be Heather Lynn. And if I was a boy, I was going to be David Edwards, Edwards being my mom's maiden name. And my dad was so excited, he called my mom's parents and said, it's a girl, her name's Heather Edwards. And he went and told my mom, and my mom said, that's not her name. And they debated because my grandparents were so excited that they given me their last name as the middle name. Do they change the name to Heather Edwards, or do they keep it Heather Lynn? And they decided to keep it Heather Lynn, but that was a slight disappointment for my grandparents.
How about you, Melanie? Is Melanie there?
Yeah, no, nothing significant.
Nothing significant, huh? Well, Catherine's going to tell us about being a twin, I think. Victoria told us already she was born in Australia on the 4th of September, or maybe the 3rd, depending on where you were.
Yeah, me and Emma were born in Plano, and we were 8 minutes apart, and I'm the older twin. But I remembered a story that my mom told me when they were deciding what they were going to name me and Emma. If they ended up having 2 boys, the first one would be Aiden James, and the second one would be named Nicholas Alexander. And my grandfather always said, that poor kid is never going to learn how to spell his name. But thankfully, neither of us is Nicholas Alexander, so.
There you go. My maiden name's Alexander, so that's a good name. Okay, well, Sandra stole my story. I was born in a little tiny town in southwest Missouri. I grew up in Rocky Comfort. I mean, come on, that's a little town. And I was born in a hospital in Stella, Missouri. And after I was born, for some reason, my dad went to run some kind of errand. I was the 3rd of 4 girls, by the way, so no boys either, not family. And the nurse came with the birth certificate. Some mother filled it out, and she named me Mary Jane. So you could be looking at Mary Jane. But my father came in later that day, and mother told him what she had done, and he said, I can't handle that. He said, that's not going to happen. And I had an aunt named Noreen, his sister, so he went down and changed it. So I became Susan Noreen Alexander, which I've grown up with that name, so I love it. Since that time, I have met a Mary Jane Alexander, and I have a really good friend named Mary Jane who lives next door. So I do know some Mary Janes, but I'm not one of them. So anyhow, I'm Susan Noreen, the 3rd of 4 girls. The point of all this is that we had a birth date. We had a time of birth. We were named at that time, okay? But that's not the case with Yahweh. He has always been, and he will never always be. There's no beginning and there's no end. And so we have to keep that in mind, that we're human beings and he's not. He's so much more. There's so much more. All these names tell us that. I mean, the names we've already studied, the names we're getting ready to study tell us all these things already. But anyway, it was a little fun exercise, but the whole point was to let us know that there is no beginning and there is no end with God, with Yahweh. So, having said that, I want to do the next slide, which is just the memory verse that she gives us every week, a memory verse. This is kind of a long one, but if you were writing it in your book and you had to fill in the blanks, she always left out Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So those parts are easy to fill out. So our memory verse is, God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, he has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. So we're going to delve into the various aspects of Yahweh today. So having said that, let's go to the video. I know Colleen has to leave early, and I promised her we'd watch the video before she had to go.
Well, this week we began looking at the Yahweh names for God. And Yahweh means the self-existent one. He had no beginning and he has no end. And I love that Yahweh is the most prevalent name for God in the Old Testament, but it was also up to that point the most personal name for God. And it does have one of those names where I'm like, he's so infinite, he's so great. I can't even fit that into my mind, that he has no beginning and no end, because my life is full of a bunch of beginnings and a bunch of middles and a bunch of endings. I think about stories, and my husband loves the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He wasn't a big reader as a child, but those are some books that he read. And then as an adult, they made movies out of those books. And he required all of our children to read the books before they could see the movies. Now, I don't know why, but it's just not my jam. It's just not my thing. And I'll go to the movie with him, and he's so excited. And at the end, he's like, wasn't that amazing? And I'm like, well, they got into trouble and they got out of trouble. And then they got into trouble and they got out of trouble. And that's kind of what my life is like. I want to go to the movies and see, not that. But as we think about the Israelites, God's people in the Old Testament, they're kind of like the characters in a Tolkien novel. They got into trouble, they got out of trouble. They were enslaved in Egypt and God delivered them. And then they're at the Red Sea. And then God parted the waters and they're on the other side. And then they're in trouble again with no water to drink at a place called Rephidim. And that's where we find them this week, when God's going to reveal one of his Yahweh names. We looked at several Yahweh names this week. Yahweh Yireh, the Lord our provider. Yahweh Rapha, the Lord our healer. But I want us to camp on the name Yahweh Nisi, the Lord our banner. And I know for you and me, we may be like, the banner? I don't have a banner. But the story of the Lord our banner talks about how God wants to be there for us when we need him the very most. You see, the Israelites were weary coming out of Egypt and coming out of the Red Sea. They were not soldiers conditioned for battle. They were brick makers in Egypt. And they're very weary. And right as they're coming through, after God provides water, they get attacked by the Amalekites. And I wonder for you, do you ever feel like, where is God when I need him most? Like, I just feel so weary and one more battle is coming up in my life. I want to share with you what one of my friends wrote when I wrote something on social media asking for experiences with Yahweh Nisi. What was it like when you were weary in battle? This is what she said. She said, I felt like the Israelites in the desert for a decade with my son's addiction. There wasn't really any true relief, and there was always another trial immediately following the last one. All I know was that so many would tell me how strong I was to be surviving it all, when there was nothing strong about me at all. I just had this massive rock beneath my feet that kept me from sinking, and that rock was Christ. And I know with all of my heart that had I not been standing on him, I would never have been able to survive any of it, especially the final chapter where our precious boy lost the battle. God keeps me standing to this very day with the promise of seeing my son again in eternity. Now, your battles may look totally different than my friends, but do you ever feel like you're just coming out of one and another one's about to start? It's like contractions in labor, isn't it? You're like, whoo, glad that one's over. Whoa, what's this next thing coming, right? And life can feel that way. And, for me, some weary seasons were like, I remember having all-day sickness when I was pregnant and caring for small children. I remember some difficult ministry seasons where I just wanted to cry uncle. I'm just done. Can a pastor's wife resign? Where does she take that piece of paper, right? Other times when I just had work deadlines that felt overwhelming. And not every season is like that, right? Sometimes we have restful, peaceful seasons, but there are moments when we are saying, where is God when I need him most? And Yahweh Nisi's name reminds us of this, that when we are weary, we can focus on the amazing things that God has done in the past to give us strength in the present. You see, that's what a banner is. Let's look at Exodus chapter 17. I'm going to read verses 8 to 11 because this is where the Lord reveals his name as Yahweh Nisi. While the people of Israel were still at Rephidim, the warriors of Amalek attacked them. Moses commanded Joshua, choose some men to go out and fight the army of Amalek for us tomorrow. I will stand at the top of the hill holding the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded and fought the army of Amalek. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. So as we talk about these battles that we have, this banner for Moses was the staff. For you and I'm like, okay, what's a physical object that reminds me of what God has done in the past to give me strength in the present? The one thing I could liken it to for you and I that might seem a little more relevant is a flag, right? The American flag, the U.S. flag, it's a symbol of unity and freedom. It was used by soldiers in the past that they would know whether to go to the right or to the left. We also use it to commemorate things. We fly it at half-mast when there's a tragedy. We also use it to pay respect. When a soldier dies, there's a special way that flag, and it's not, the flag itself has no power or anything. It's a symbol of something greater. And for you and I, that's what a banner is, a symbol of what God has done spiritually in our lives to help us when we're weary. And see, when they came out, these Amalekites started attacking them. These were distant cousins to Israel. They knew that Yahweh had promised them this land. They didn't have to attack them. And I love what it says in Deuteronomy, and it talks about God's feelings toward the Amalekites. And it's not that he doesn't love and value every person. Remember that he does. But know this, when you are kicked, when you are down, God's not a big fan of that. Listen to what he says. He said, never forget what the Amalekites did to you as you came out of Egypt. They attacked you when you were exhausted and weary, and they struck down those who were straggling behind. They had no fear of God. See, where is God when we need him most? He wants to help us. He wants to fight our battles. And he tells us that there are modern day Amalekites who like to attack the weary. We know it. We've experienced it. So what can we do to win the battle? How can we win when we're weary? And so I want to talk about 3 ways to victory that we find right in this passage that talks about Yahweh Nissi. And the first one is this: victory is vertical. Victory is vertical. See, what God calls us to do is to raise a banner during weak moments. Now, Moses, we learned in our study this week that this banner symbolized some pretty amazing things. Moses carried this banner when he returned to Egypt to beseech Pharaoh to let my people go. He threw it down in front of Pharaoh and it turned into a snake and then turned back into a staff. He raised it high to initiate several of the plagues. And he raised it over the Red Sea to part the waters. Do you see how this was a banner? This physical object, it wasn't magic. Nothing magic in this piece of wood. It is a symbol of what God has done in the past to remind us that he will be here with us in the present. I think of a banner for me is my wedding ring, right? Wrong hand, this one. This wedding ring is something that I put on the day that I made a covenant with my husband. And sometimes I look at it and I remember all the great things. And sometimes I look at it and go, I made a covenant, right? It's a banner. It's a physical representation of a commitment that I made. And so just as soldiers look to the flag in battle, we need to look to physical reminders. Maybe they're a memory marker. Maybe they're a physical object. Maybe there's a sign in your house. But victory is vertical. And the next thing is that victory requires vision. It means we have to look up. We have to believe the truth about God more than we believe the reality of the battle that's going on. To know that Yahweh Nissi cares. So here's my question for you when it comes to vision. How has God helped you in the past? I bet he has. Some of you may be like, I don't know, has he? You got enough food? Got enough water? He has helped us through battles in the past. I know that he has. And the root word of Nissi is the word Ness. And it means to raise up. So we're supposed to raise up with vision that banner. What does that look like for you and I today? I mean, real life. Standing in the Walmart line at grocery store, right? Standing with our kids when they're having a fight. Dealing with a coworker at work. How do we raise up a banner? And I would just say this, we remember it. We recall it to our memory. Then we dwell on it. It's so easy to dwell on the negative, isn't it? It is work to dwell, to camp out in the goodness of God. And then we talk about it. This is one of the ways that we can raise the banner because victory comes through vision. I'm just going to tell you, I don't always feel it. Do you always feel it? I don't always feel it. And it does feel like we're attacked in weak moments. I love the acronym HALT. It's hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. That's when the enemy goes after me. I don't know about you. Is in those weak moments. What do we do in those weak moments? We halt, we stop, and then we evaluate our feelings. I love what someone from the past, and I tried to look up the source on this, and it's kind of muddy because lots of people used this illustration. It's facts, faith, and then feelings. I think it's interesting when a pastor quotes somebody else, they say, as so-and-so said, facts, faith, feelings. And the next person says, as it's said often, facts, faith, feelings. And then they say, as I always say, fact, right? So many people, Billy Graham used this illustration, F.B. Meyer used this illustration. But here's what I mean. The order here is important in our vision because we can't let feelings drive the train of our lives. We just can't. And here's why. They're fickle. They change. They're so affected by hormones and weather. And they're just all over the place. They're important. They need to be validated. But there's an order to things. We start with the facts. And when it comes to our faith, ladies, we have good facts. We've got the reliability of our manuscripts. We've got archaeological evidence to back up what we believe. Don't be afraid to search and to study it. There's no fear in the facts. But then once we hear the facts, we then have to believe with our will by faith. And then what I've found to be true in my life, in the battle, is that the feelings then follow. I wish it was immediate. I wish it went just like that. But it takes sometimes days, sometimes weeks for me to say, God, I am setting my will toward you. I don't feel it. I'm upset. My body is not getting the memo about what I'm telling it to believe. But here's what we need for this process. It's why I believe the Apostle Paul said we need to work out our salvation. It's about setting our will to the facts, then believing in faith, and then the feelings follow. And what we need for this process is time to process, to do this thing, to quiet places of reflection. I'm not good at this. Are you good at this? Giving the time, because victory requires vision. And that vision means looking to the facts, believing by faith. And I'll tell you, there's no greater banner of faith to raise up for you than the names of God. When you're in that moment and you're like, my feelings aren't coming along, just start rehearsing them back to yourself. You are El Che, the living God. You are El Olam, the everlasting God. You are Yahweh Yireh, my provider. You are Yahweh Nisi, the banner that I can raise up because you've done it in the past and you will do it again. Don't listen to yourself. Talk to yourself. And then I promise you, the feelings will come along. Let them be the caboose on your train. Some of you have had attacks of poverty, attacks of difficult marriages, attacks of the death of loved ones, attacks of disease and difficulty. And there is a woman in church history named Susanna Wesley who dealt with every single one of those things I just mentioned. She married a minister named Samuel Wesley in the 1600s, 1688. Her son John is the founder of the Methodist movement. Her son Charles wrote many beloved hymns that we sing today. But her first daughter died at the end of her first year of life. She lost 2 infant sons. In all, it's told she had at least 19 children, only 10 of which survived. I mean, I think I'm crying uncle over stuff, right? That's tough. That's a battle. And then she was married to Samuel, and he was a very poor money manager. And they lived off their pastor's salary, and he wrote some poems and things, but at one point, he went to debtor's prison. Did y'all know that was really a thing? Like when you couldn't pay your debts, you had to go work it off in prison. And he was there for 3 months. And here's what I think reveals Susanna's ability to trust in Yahweh Nissi. To be able to say, I'm not going to just go with my feelings. Because while he was there, she took off her wedding ring and sent it to her poor money manager husband and said, maybe this would help you get better food and better treatment. See, if I was living by my feelings, I don't think I would have done that. I think about some of the emotional decisions I've made. How about you? Your emotional food decisions, were those your best ones? How about your emotional financial decisions? Were those your best ones? How about in your marriages like Susanna's? She learned to put her will first. Now, I'm not saying after that, and he got released after about 3 months, some friends and some family helped get him back home. But I love that her story is not, just pie in the sky. Everything was perfect. She battled in her marriage. I mean, they were big personalities and they clashed. But she relentlessly clung to Yahweh. She believed what God had done in the past, and she persevered for her marriage. Her adult children wrote much later about how tumultuous it was in their home. And yet she produced children that started a huge movement of God and wrote hymns. She had to keep fighting when she was weary, through tragedy, through poverty, through a difficult marriage, but she persevered. It's easier said than done, isn't it? Especially when we're asking, where's God when I need him most? We have to have that vision to keep looking for him and setting our will toward him. And then the last thing, and I love this last part of the story, is that victory recognizes vulnerabilities. We have to recognize that we can't go it alone. I want to pick the story back up in Exodus 17. I'm going to read the rest of it, verses 12 to 15. See, Moses' arms soon became so tired he could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on, and they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands, so his hands held steady until sunset. As a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek in battle. After the victory, the Lord instructed Moses, write this down on a scroll as a permanent reminder. Oh, he wrote it down for you and for me as a permanent reminder. And read it aloud to Joshua. I will erase the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar there and named it Yahweh Nissi, which means the Lord is my banner. Josephus, this historian, tells us that Hur was married to Miriam. So this was his brother and his brother-in-law, and they came alongside. And if Moses only had to hold him up for 5 minutes, it wouldn't have been so hard. It was a long time. And for some of us in our battles and in our weary seasons, it's just a perennial problem. It's a long time. Susanna battled poverty for a long time. She battled in her marriage for a long time. And we have to recognize our vulnerabilities and say, sometimes we can't keep holding our arms up. We need friends to come alongside and do that for us. So when we can't stand, we need friends who will lead us to the rock. I love that picture of the rock, and I love how the New Testament identifies who that rock was. I'm going to read from 1 Corinthians, which kind of retells the story for us in a New Testament context. And in verses 3 and 4, I want you to listen for who that rock was. That was a banner, a symbol of someone. Talking about the Israelites in the wilderness, it says, all of them ate the same spiritual food and all of them drank the same spiritual water, for they drank from the spiritual rock that traveled with them. And that rock was Christ. See, what we learn is that when we're vulnerable, we need people who will lead us to Christ. I say sometimes don't sit on your friends. And what I mean is sometimes we want to make our rock other people, right? We don't want to sit on our friends. We want friends who will lead us to stand firm on Christ. and that will hold up our arms in the battle. And I wonder if you're thinking like I was thinking through this. I'm like, what is a banner for me? I'm just not really into stuff, right? I don't have a lot of physical objects that represent spiritual truths in my life. And then I thought about Christ being the rock, but I thought about this, the cross. For those of us who follow Jesus, the cross is our banner. And y'all, if we were picking a logo today, it'd be like picking the electric chair for our logo. This was an element of torture, but it reminds us the lengths that Yahweh Nissi went to save us when he sent his son Jesus to die for us. This is what we look to and remember, and we can't overdo the cross thing. It's just not possible. We look at it and we remember, okay, this is how I'm feeling today, but I know that Jesus died for me to restore my relationship with God. Now, as we talk about friends not being our foundation and being the kind of people that would hold our hands up, I do think we struggle with this, don't we? Wanting to put our trust in people, wanting people instead of being alongside us, we want them to be the thing we're standing on. You know, in our small group Bible study that my husband and I host, we have a whole bunch of young couples. They're all in their 20s. No one's been married more than 2 years. And we have 8 of these couples with us. And we, at the end of our Bible study night, we'll separate the boys from the girls and we'll share prayer requests. And there was a young gal who'd been married about 6 months. And she shared this. She said, I think what God is trying to teach me right now is that I had kind of bought into the lie of our culture that says, this person will complete me, right? We hear that in the movies. You complete me. Actually, no. It's never going to be enough. And she said, I'm just realizing my husband's job is not to make me happy, that God wants to use this to make me holy. And as she shared this, 3 other girls burst out into tears in the group. And I was like, what is happening here? And they all admitted as young marrieds that they're just struggling because they're trying to stand on their husbands. It's not a solid rock. That they have to stand on Christ, and their husband hopefully will be one of those people who will hold up their arms as they choose to follow the Lord. Maybe, maybe not. But we have to be careful of this. Now, some of you may be like, I need some of those people to come hold up my arms. Where do I find these people? Well, let me just say, this is why I think groups are so important. And we have all kinds of fancy names in the church for our groups, don't we? They're grace groups, small groups, movement groups, Bible study groups, focus groups. I don't care what you call it. But here's what we've got to do. We've got to move out of the rows and into the circles. Because it's in the circles that we share our vulnerabilities, that we tell, hey, I can't hold my arms up anymore. I need some help. This is where we meet those people. So if you're here and you're thinking, I need someone to help me, go get in a group. Study the Bible together and share what's going on. And that's where we find those people. Now, we are beholding Yahweh Nissi today. And this may be a new, fresh name for us. We may never have heard it before, but every single one of these names, we can behold them and you can start talking to him by name. You can pray, especially during your weary seasons. Yahweh Nissi, where are you when I need you most? Because I feel attacked. These modern day Amalekites, they're after me in the forms of jobs and kids and churches and people and health. And we can cry out to him and behold him, but then we have to move into believing him. That when we look to the cross or whatever banner we have in our lives, that we would believe that he is who he says he is in his word. And then what will bloom in our lives is trust, obedience, that we will not try to fight our battles on our own. And we will be, our victory, it's vertical. It requires vision and it requires being vulnerable. So here's my action step for us this week. Would you, just even right now as you're thinking, God, help me identify a banner in my life. Either a memory, a time when I know you came through, a story that happened in my life. Maybe it's somebody else's stories like Susanna Wesley's or Isabel Coon's or another person you know that you can hold on to the truth of that story. Maybe it's a physical object. Maybe you have a verse at your office desk or something that is a physical, tangible reminder of who God is. And if you're like, I got nothing, I got one for you. It's right here. It's the cross. It's so simple. You can draw it on anything. You can put it on a necklace. You can paint it on a sign. One of my friends on the way here has it on her journal. It's a physical reminder to say, God, I believe in what you've done, and I'm going to trust you now in the present, and that I'm going to have victory. God wants us to win. He set us up to win. You were wired to win. Let's pray. Yahweh Nisi, I'm just so thankful that you know how weary we get, and that you know the battles that we face, and that you don't like it when people kick us when we're down, and that you're on our side, Lord. Lord, I praise you that you've shown us a way to victory. I just pray that you'd help us to walk in it. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Today we considered the question, where is God when we need him most? In those moments when we feel weary and yet another obstacle rises up to meet us, we can count on him for strength. He is Yahweh Nisi, the Lord our banner. He has been faithful in the past, and he will see us through again. We raise our arms heavenward and look for strength from our self-existent God for help. Sometimes when our battles are long and hard, we need our friends to hold our arms up for us. Good friends lead us to the rock, to Christ. They can't save us, but they can lead us to a firm foundation and support us in seeking God. The cross is our banner. As we remember what God did in sending his son to die for us, we can have victory even on weak and weary days. Hold on to this truth. We can focus on the amazing things God has done in the past to give us strength in the present.
My volume back up. I didn't need my volume that loud for her. All right, okay, that's our memory verse, and we've looked at that. And so now we need to look at our video questions for just a little bit. The Amalekites targeted the Israelites when they were weary. What challenges have presented themselves in your lives during a weary season? Anybody want to share anything of that question? And anybody online? What challenges have presented themselves in your life during a weary season?
My example would be right after my divorce. I was in another state. I had 4 little kids, and then I was diagnosed with some medical stuff that I was told I was too anemic to have surgery, that I would probably die if I tried to have the surgery at that point. And it was just like one more thing that I had to deal with. And fortunately, my parents came in and helped me out to get through that. But that was a challenging season.
Yep. Any others? We've all had them. Some are, obviously a little more difficult than others, but we've all had them. I think about you, Ellen, when your dad passed away. I mean, you came back to church. You came by Bible study. You did that funeral in the afternoon, and nobody knew. I mean, probably people in the office did, but none of us knew that your dad already passed that morning. I mean, that had to be a challenge for you.
That was a hard day.
That was a hard day. That's a hard day. Okay. Any other comments on that question? I mean, we have a lot of questions and we haven't got a lot of time, obviously, so let's look at the next one then. What is a physical object that has represented spiritual truths to you? What is a physical object? She pointed to the obvious one, is the cross. We probably all have one somewhere in our homes, hanging on the wall or standing on a dresser or rocks. Rocks, okay. Is it a rock?
We were talking about that at one. So.
It's a resurrection plant. Mm-hmm.
Andrew's given Ellen a resurrection plant, and
Oh,
she's
wow.
opening that right now.
Yeah,
I think Ellen has
talk
the-
about it. Talk about it.
And Sandra's going to talk about while Ellen opens it.
It's like a fern type plant that, you know, all you have to do is, I mean, it looks like this little ball of nothing. And if you, when you water it, it'll open it up and it's a fern and it's green and everything. So right now it's just like, it's nothing.
So it'll grow then.
It
it'll
will,
be like
well,
a little bush.
I mean, it just opens up and it's very fern-like. Yeah, I mean, that's the roots down there in the bottom.
Wow.
So you don't have to put it in anything. You can put pebbles around it if you want, but speaking of rocks, but yeah,
So it's an air plant?
yeah. Well, you put water with it.
Pardon?
Water.
Okay.
It'll open up with water. And it's like in an hour it would open up probably if we. All right. Well, maybe 30 minutes. We'll see.
Okay, so we talked about the cross, we talked about the resurrection tree. Do we have others? Are there other things that we think about, those banners? Cross is obvious, isn't it?
We don't have them here, stained glass windows.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Ann pointed out that in our other church, we had stained glass windows that we all mourned when we had to leave them behind. But we did, they were important to all of us who had gone to church in that particular building. So that's true, we had those.
Sometimes your Bible.
The Bible, Karen said the Bible. We're not passing around this thing, so I guess I'm the intermediary here. Karen said the Bible is a banner. It helps us remember. Remember that she said a banner helps you, not only gives you a strength, but it helps you remember how God has helped you in the past. And certainly there's all kinds of stories in the Bible about how God has prevailed, has helped others prevail. The Israelites prevailed in the past. And if we look back at our lives, we're going to find places where we prevailed because we had Yahweh Nissi, Yahweh Nissi on our side. I mean, Victoria talked about one. I've been through divorce, and it's no fun raising kids as a single parent. It's no fun blending families. Let me tell you, that was not an easy process. But you know, we're here. We made it. All of us in this room have got things we can remember that represent spiritual truth to us, and the symbols in our lives that keep us going forward, remembering things that happened in the past that gave us strength for the present and going forward. So we need to remember those things. Sometimes we forget them in the midst of our difficult situations. We have to remind ourselves or have to look to friends who will remind us of them. Unfortunately, we probably have those in our lives as well. What are some tangible ways the Lord, we kind of talked on that, haven't we? I got ahead of myself. What are some tangible ways the Lord has helped you in the past? What are some creative ways you can remember it, dwell on it, and talk about it this week?
I don't know if I consider it a creative way, but my Bible has a cover that you can put a photo in. And I have a photo of me and my 4 children that was taken right after my ex-husband walked out. And it was always a sort of a conversation starter because I'd bring the Bible and someone would comment, "Oh, that's a cute picture." You know how people do. And I'd say, "Yeah, that's my reminder that, God has brought me so far." My kids are all grown now. They were little tiny in that picture, but it's a reminder of how far God has brought me, and it's a way for me to sort of share that with others.
That's a good one, Victoria. It is creative.
That is, that's great, very creative.
Wait a minute, let's find the speaker. Yeah, there it is.
Don, here, San Parton. To follow up on that, Don preached a sermon about the Ebenezer Rock. God has got me this far. And I wrote it on, at that point, we had a desk calendar, not a computer thing. So I wrote it on my desk calendar. So every day I would read it and remember, hey, he got me this far. He'll take me the rest of the way.
Hi, Carlene. I also have a couple of magnets on my refrigerator that I see every day that are very helpful. There's ways. Let's go on. Name 1 or 2 spiritual friends who have supported you in seeking the Lord. Anybody want to talk about a friend they've had that have helped them seek the Lord?
Just so important.
Yeah. So are our parents. My mom was.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was a pianist at a little church. There were like 50 of us. I told you before, my sister and I were the choir on other Sundays. It's a very small church. My mom was. But I have good friends that are very solidly placed in the Lord and are very good friends that are there. Somebody else? Anybody else online want to talk about spiritual friends who supported you in seeking the Lord?
Oh, here. So in spiritual friends, gratefully we have them, right? And they're treasures. But sometimes they, hold up a mirror to you like, like Jonathan.
Yeah, then we're not too
Oh,
crazy.
good.
We're not too crazy about it.
Yeah. Well, but that's the whole deal. That's what's so important.
It is. It's not easy to look at ourselves, though. We don't want to do that. But we need someone to do that for us. And we all have them. Look, we're all sitting here in this room together.
Oh, yeah.
We're right
One
here.
another. Yeah.
And we've been here for years, some of us. And some of you are not as there, but you've been here a long time. So we're here and we're online.
I think maybe some of our small group are our spiritual friends.
Right. Of course they are.
Lift us up.
Some of these small groups are so close they travel together even. So there's things like that. Okay, let's go to the questions. People online, I posted them. So I hope some of you that have, Victoria, you probably have them, don't you?
I could stay
Questions
another-
on your phone? Okay, well, let's break out. It's 11 o'clock
Better hurry.
and there's a lot of questions because she only,
You want to move over here? I'm going to have to leave.
just a minute.
Or someone move over here with.
We're rearranging our groups.
So Ann
I
and
just-
somebody, and this unnamed person over here.
I just want to say, before we get into the questions, that she spent the whole morning on Yahweh Nisi, but there are 3 other names in there. Yahweh Rapha, I think, is a really important one personally to me. And so these questions are arranged by day. And so obviously it's 11 o'clock, okay? So let's come back together in about 20 minutes. I'll check in with you in about 20 minutes and we'll go from there. But try to hit at least one or two questions on each day so that we look at these other names because they're pretty important too.
Yeah. Sorry. That's okay.
So are there any of you who have comments on any of the questions that you talked about that resonated with you or that you wanted to share with us? Anybody in the room, anybody online? Were you able to get through all 5 days? That's a lot of questions.
Melanie,
But Ella's group got through it. She said they breezed right through. Good for you.
Susan, I had asked if Melanie would share one of the stories she shared with us, because it's such a great example of God providing and God I am. Do you
Oh.
mind, Melanie?
Sure. We had two new clients last weekend, actually on the 4th of July. And one was a little boy. Well, actually the one that, 'cause we don't have a lot of time, but there was a 17-year-old girl who came, and she was a lot different than she presented on paper. And so she came with a helmet on, and she was banging her head in the car. And so we thought, oh, okay, change your plans. And anyway, when she got into the barn, every time she didn't get her way, which was about every 10 seconds, she would drop to the ground. And her pants were all torn and all that. Cause I mean, I don't know how she did that without really ruining her knees. But that was dangerous because a lot of times it was in front of the horse or beside the horse, almost under the horse. And so our dogs are big golden mountain doodles. And so I brought them out, and she really loved them. And I said, okay, when she went down, I put the dogs down right beside her. And then I'd tell the dogs up, and they are, they know that command, and they sit right up immediately. And then I said, get up like the dogs did. And she did. And so then she would do it again. She went down, the dogs went down. And I say up, because it's hard. We couldn't pull her up because she was just dead weight. And as soon as I said up, the dogs got up, she got up. And then by the end, it was, she went down, and then she got up first, and she told the dog, she gestured to the dogs to get up because she's nonverbal. And truly, my daughter said, Mom, that was such a good idea. And I said, no, that was all God. I said, we train the dogs for a reason, but this was perfect. And it was certainly God's nudging to me. So
Yeah.
I give him the credit.
Oh, that's a
That's
wonderful
great.
story and a
Yeah.
really good example.
Yeah.
Anybody else before we go on to joys and concerns? Anybody else, anything you want to say? No?
I just think, there's.
Here you go.
Sandra started commenting, but she's got to get to.
In the Sunday school class, John, what's his name? McClure. Yes, I know it's one of the mix. He was talking about another way to translate "I am who I am" is "I will be who I will be," which is because there's not really they don't really know what how to translate it specifically, but just thinking of it that way, it's like you said, Susan, it's like past, present, future. I will be who I will be. And it's so just a different way to think about that.
We talked about that at our table.
Yeah.
A little bit. Any other comments? Are we ready to go joys and concerns? Okay.